Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the 26th SF Indie Fest. The festival will be running from February 8th through 18th at the historic Roxy Theater in San Francisco, as well as online. Thank you so much to our filmmakers for joining us today for the Four Stories Shorts program. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you and feel so lucky to have had shared your stories. I'd love to just kick things off by having folks introduce yourselves to the audience and let us know what film you're with and what your role was. And we'll kick it off with Catherine.
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me. And my name's Kat Finsness, and I directed Cloistered, also produced, edited, and photographed it. So yeah, and I'm based in the San Francisco area.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. Hi, Jack and Jack. Welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to juggle this. I'm Jack Yonover,
I'm Jack McMahon.
and we're with Welcome Back Lounge. I directed, Jack produced, and we kind of worked as a unit on everything in between. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm Jonathan Rowan. I'm the director of the movie.
Thanks so much. And hi, Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert Phillipson. I'm the executive producer and writing of The Knowing, and I am based in Oakland.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So excited to have you all join us. I'd love to just kick things off by hearing about the genesis of your project. How did the story come to you, or how did you become involved? And we'll kind of start with Robert.
Age before beauty, huh? The story is autobiographical. I was involved in an interracial relation in the 80s, and my partner died of AIDS. We'd already split up by that time, but I was very involved in his care and communication towards the end of life, even though he was in Washington, D.C., and I had moved back to California by that time. Not everything in the film is true to life, but it was a traumatic experience, and it was one that I buried for like 30 years because I couldn't process it. And then it came roaring back when everybody started wearing masks for the pandemic. So that's how that came about.
Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing. I mean, yes, definitely the connections between what we all felt at the pandemic, and definitely, being from the Bay Area, knowing about the kind of violence that was inflicted upon those that were living with AIDS at that, especially in the 80s and 90s. So many connections that you can make to the way that our public health system has underserved folks, especially from communities that have been excluded from having a real say. So thank you so much for bringing the story. And Jonathan, I'd love to hear how you got connected with this, how you found the story and brought it to light.
Yes, I believe one of my former film school professors actually referred me to Robert and the team as a director. And when I took a look at the story, I knew it would be impactful. It was a period piece, something I had not previously, done before, and also a queer narrative, which I feel like showcases, much needed inclusion and diversity in our, society of films and industry. And it was an important story that needed to be told, and also, championing people who are dealing with HIV and AIDS. So it was very gripping. So I wanted to bring my touch of what I do with my films and my dramas to this story, and really let the viewer feel the impact of the emotion of the story, how it's told, and how these two characters are living and can't understand one another at the time, and are trying to find closure in this heartbreaking, time.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jonathan. All right, Jack and Jack. So you two obviously work very collaboratively. I think you can kind of tell us where the seed came from, how y'all developed this, and kind of started working on it together.
Yeah, so there's one person in the frame, or who's not in this frame right now, that it kind of began with our friend Connor, who's also lead actor of the film, and he came to me with the nucleus of the story, without a broader vision for it, or I think really any goal in mind. I quickly recognized it as this concept of a alienated high schooler who is rotating through these identities as potentially an interesting vessel to explore a coming of age story that we don't see as often, that I think we could both resonate with, even if the specific details and even the way that this character conducts himself would be different from the way that we'd express similar feelings. So I kind of sat with that and worked on the script, and at the same time was pitching to Jack, giving again this vague pitch for it. And so we kind of brought it up from there together. Him being the producer just did so much groundwork to kind of get pieces in place. And we don't have the luxury of, we didn't have the luxury of starting with a lot of money or having a script that came, from a third party. So it really was just a group effort working together, bringing it to life. And then suddenly we were rolling, and we were fortunate to get some financial support to make it happen. So it was a pretty organic process, but I think the thing that drew us all to the story and um, drove the process was this drive to tell, saying drive a lot, to tell a coming of age story that, um, I'm from the Chicagoland area and the neighborhoods where all the John Hughes movies were shot. And so I think my image of a coming of age story, it's a lot cleaner. You have all these tropes. We wanted to tell a story, but that felt more relevant and contemporary for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, just super quick. When Jack approached me with the script, I'd worked with him previously on a few different projects with his co-partner for his production company. Really just appreciate Jack's love for film and just kind of his interest in kind of making a different type of coming of age story, as well as after meeting Connor, who had come with the story, I really kind of saw this interesting character that Jack had mentioned. So got really excited and wanted to make it a reality. So yeah, it was a really fun experience, and glad that we got it done.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. Kat, how about you? How did this film come together? How did you find your subjects and kind of get into capturing this world?
Yeah, so it started as my thesis in film grad school. I went to a social documentary program in New York, and at the time I came across an older article from the New York Times about this particular monastery in New Jersey. And the article was about how young women were being attracted to this monastery and joining this monastery in a landscape where a lot of monasteries are closing down around the country. They can't really find new vocations. And so it was kind of a unique place, and just curious like that a lot of young women were choosing this life to be cloistered. It's a pretty radical choice. And the photographs that accompanied the article by Tony Greaves were really cinematic, I thought, and very mysterious and beautiful. And so I was drawn to the subject, and I thought that it could make an interesting film or documentary. And so I contacted the monastery, talked with them about this idea, and then they voted as a community whether they would allow me to come in and film, and they voted yes. And so then I was there over the course of like a year and a half. I was living in New York at the time, but I would take the train and spend like weekends or like some of my breaks there, and then filmed over like a year and a half. So that's how that started.
Awesome. I'm actually gonna kick it back to you, Kat. Just I really want to talk about, especially with documentary filmmaking, there's like so much trust and need to approach your access point ethically. How how do those conversations, come about in terms of like how you're going to approach the filmmaking, which is very like naturalistic and beautiful. But like, what was your kind of conversation with them, and how did that shape the way that you constructed your film?
Yeah, definitely. So, initially, I kind of had an idea of how the film would feel, or I had inspirations for the film, and it was a constant talking with them as well, and collaboration, in terms of what would be important to show in terms of their way of life. And so it was conversations with them about kind of figuring out a schedule of what to film and when I would be there, or what were kind of special or important moments that I could film. But also at the same time, like they were pretty open and trusting in terms of me bringing kind of my own interpretation or style or kind of approach to it. And so it wasn't, it was a pretty open process, and like they were very trusting. And then I did show them, initially the film was like 50 minutes or almost 60 minutes long, and I showed them a rough draft of it, after not I didn't really show them much until like a year after I had worked on it and edited it, and I got feedback from them. And then I took a break from the film during COVID, and then I went back to it with their feedback in mind and completely actually re-edited it, to be a short 20-minute film. And so it changed over time. And I think it was also based on kind of their feedback and kind of just wanting to make sure that it's like an authentic portrayal of their life. But it definitely, yeah, it's challenging. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of trust that they gave me, which is like I'm really grateful for. But it was like a process for sure.
Um, well, it paid off. I think you captured something that feels very genuine, and very beautifully rendered. So thank you so much. Uh, Robert and Jonathan, I would love to continue this theme of like trust and collaboration. Robert, I'm gonna start off with you. Like, what was that process like? Having such a personal narrative and bringing Jonathan into the fold. Like, what were your conversations like, and how did you decide on that approach?
I will say, and I'm sure Jonathan will corroborate, that it was not easy. I was, I produced other films, other documentaries, even other narrative shorts, and because it wasn't personal, I was able to let the film evolve through the production process in a way that was more difficult for me. With this one, Jonathan came to it from his own perspective, and we had some clashes, but one of the things that Jonathan brought to the film that I want to recognize is he brought in Black love. There's a lot of Black love in that film, and it was there in real life as well, but I was less, I couldn't see it even 30 years later, because I was still working through the experience that I had gone through. I didn't even see the racial dimensions as sharply as I did until Jonathan began working on the film. And that's just an invaluable contribution.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. And Jonathan, how was that process for you? I mean, obviously, it's such a responsibility, especially working with somebody who, you know, this is their lived experience. And there's stories that maybe don't have kind of the same reality that they do now. I mean, there are, of course, a lot of pressures on the LGBTQIA communities. And I don't think that things have gotten easier, but I do think that there are huge differences in the way we navigate some of these issues, particularly now, you know, with the legalization of marriage and other things like that, and the, you know, treatment and care and understanding of HIV and AIDS. Can you speak to how you approach this and, you know, respected Robert and his vision and his lived experience while also bringing in your own unique directorial voice?
Yes, I thought it was a welcome challenge for me to do something of this magnitude, yet it being such a personal story, and also wanting to champion queer narratives, you know, and bring another queer narrative to life from a different standpoint that we don't really usually see. So I wanted to find the balance in, you know, the personal relation that Robert had to the story, and also what I saw from my vantage point, you know, as a Black person. And putting myself in the other character's position and knowing the dynamics of Black families, and just kind of like how, like you mentioned today, you can be a little bit more free with your sexuality. But back then, as you know, most queer people couldn't say how they felt, you know. And then the AIDS epidemic was so new, almost kind of like mirroring COVID a little bit, that it was shameful when people just put you aside and left you alone and isolate you even more. So to have those elements of racial divide with having a queer experience from a Black perspective that was totally negative, not accepted by anybody, not even his own family, he couldn't even speak to, is something that I wanted to bring authenticity to the story and have the story a little bit more balanced from both perspectives, from, you know, Robert's personal perspective through that character and how he felt and how he dealt with everything, and also what had happened with the other side of the perspective and what is lying also in the middle. So I thought it was a fun challenge, and I wanted to just, you know, do it justice and make it as authentic as possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Jack and Jack, one thing that really strikes me about your film is it has this amazing kinetic energy. And I feel like, you know, you already talked about like harkening back to like coming of age, especially like being from Chicago and thinking about John Hughes. Things are like often like a little bit more static and contained. And I feel like what you've achieved is a real kind of journey through this experience that kind of, to me, was like very evocative of like a feeling and time in life. And I was wondering, Jack Y, if you could talk to the visual approach and how you kind of brought that together. And Jack M, if you could kind of speak about what it was like to help collaborate on that and like bring it into reality.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. If anything, I wish we could have moved the camera more, but there's always limitations and difficulties. I think as far as the visual style we can see from the beginning, a big focus for me was, you know, especially with student filmmaking, a luxury we typically don't have is that of location. Just really wanted these locations to feel genuine and lived in and have those details, because I just think it makes such a big difference. And then with that, you know, to try and be patient and also embrace the use of the wide and really get to see and feel the space. That was just a big, you know, that was the goal that we set out with as we sort of got deeper into the script and developing the style scene by scene. I think with the exterior stuff, that handheld camera movement was it was a lot of fun for us. We came up with a lot of that on the fly. The dramatic scenes were pretty meticulously planned. We had to keep our coverage limited because of time constraints, and I like what we did there, but it was a lot of fun being out on the streets, both allowing Connor to improvise physically and then also getting to improvise with the camera. So I got to take over holding the camera a few times on those. And I guess one scene that stands out in particular, we wanted to shoot the scene where Connor walks in. Oh, sorry. Where Connor walks into the strip club, or tries to walk into the strip club, And, we didn't have the strip club, we didn't have the bouncer. So we didn't know exactly how we were going to do it. But once we were able to get on set and we tried it a few times, the bouncer was really excited about being in the movie and got into it. And so I kind of just grabbed the camera and was like, I really want to tunnel behind Connor. And I think what that boiled down to was another goal for us was really positioning the audience in Connor's perspective. And so with those sequences, we had to feel as though we were right there with him and moving with him. So a lot of fun and certainly difficult at times, but really happy with how some of those sequences turned out.
Definitely. And I
Awesome.
mean,
Thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
And
then-
yeah, no, Jack, I just wanted to kind of jump in here really quickly and say, like, we don't often talk about the role of a creative producer. Often when we think about like a Hollywood type producer, it's like, oh, just like the slimy person that like gets the money. But like, as a creative producer myself, I think that like there's something really beautiful about having a close collaboration with your filmmaker. And so like, how did you support Jack in his crazy visions and help realize something so beautifully?
Well, before he goes, just to make sure he doesn't not deprive himself of credit, one of the shots that everyone compliments the most on the bridge, Jack totally designed that and figured out how to do it. So he was completely involved and right over my shoulder, even designing shots at times. So can't give him enough credit, and definitely not a slimy. I like to dig at him like that, but not a slimy producer.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think just the fact that we became friends super quick really helped with the kind of creative relationship where he would tell me something and I'd understand it pretty easily, or if I didn't, he'd show me references and we'd be able to have a very open conversation, which started from the get-go. And I think when coming out of the project, I told him that I wanted to make something that had this kind of extreme high quality while also really capturing the vision that he wanted to put across. And I think the really first step of doing that was finding our director of photography, Dennis Lee. Had been reaching out to various people, but when I set up a lunch for him and Jack to meet, they kind of immediately started connecting, sharing very similar favorite movies. Dennis had been wanting to film something in this kind of space and this type of genre for a while. So that Dennis's interest in the genre and interest in the script really kind of helped add that third part to our kind of relationship where Jack was telling me stuff and he could also have that open communication with Dennis. So that kind of quick friendship that we all created just really allowed for him to communicate, okay, we need these lenses this week. So it's just allowed for a lot, very easy communication. Things were very meticulously planned out. And we're then able to take the next step to get some of those really interesting locations that we were able to put into the film. So really excited and happy how it turned out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, so much of filmmaking, right, is like communication, trust, and respect. And I think that that is exemplified in all of your work. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for our Q&A today. But thank you all so much for joining us, to our audience. We couldn't do it without you. And thank you so much for our filmmakers for trusting us to share your stories. And have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.